Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Hi, this is Russell Tammany.
I'm Anthony Nielsen.
And today we're reviewing the Blackmagic Cinema Camera 2.5K. So this camera is pretty unique. It's Blackmagic's first sort of foray into the field of professional video cameras. And they've built a really interesting product. This is basically a 2.5K video sensor that's mounted in a body with Canon EF lens mount. So for the connectors on the side, we've got a headphone connector and we've got two audio imports. Now these are fully balanced 1/4-inch jacks. There's an SDI out connector as well. And below that is a Thunderbolt connector, which can be used for recording the video directly to a Mac or for looking at scopes, but it can't be used for transferring files off. And then there's a power connector that's also used for charging the internal battery or for powering it off of a portable battery pack or a wall adapter.
On the other side, we have a SSD dock where it'll record videos in multiple formats, including Apple ProRes, 422 high quality, DNX HD for Avid, and then also
it's the
RAW
Cinema DNG RAW
2.5K.
You have 12-bit in RAW and 10-bit in the ProRes and DNX HD, which is very high quality video, whether you use the RAW or the ProRes or DNX HD.
And for the display, it's actually a touch display where you can double tap to get a 1:1 pixel ratio, so you could actually control the focus, and also you just tap and enter metadata.
And all the controls are really rather simple. It's all touchscreen based, so you can enter into a menu and then go through the options and settings. There's really not too many options and settings.
Yeah.
You won't really be overloaded with, how many options there are, which on a lot of professional cameras, you got to get out the manual and read the manual to figure out what everything means. But it's a real simple product. It's basically, what type of format you want to record in, what's your ISO and white balance, really not much other than that.
Other features, you have your iris, which will automatically make sure you're not clipping your exposure, so you're just right under 100% exposure. Then also focus, which will highlight the focus area. This
really isn't the normal kind of product that we'd review here on Before You Buy, because it's not really intended to be a consumer product. It's really intended to be a professional video recorder. And, as being a professional video recorder, there's sort of some limitations to that, this produces some absolutely stunning quality video. However, you're not going to just take it out of the box and get that level of video without having either the right equipment or the right production and the right preparation. So one of the things that you might notice is that it's not easy to just grab and hold. It doesn't really have a way to hold it steady. You really want to have like a follow focus setup. You want to have a mounting rig, a cage. Yeah. You want to have all of this gear that you bolt onto it so that you can effectively utilize this camera. So it doesn't necessarily come ready to shoot or ready to go. Obviously, you're going to need a lens. One of the interesting things is that the crop factor is somewhere between 2.3 and 2.4x. And that's relatively significant because your general crop cameras are only around 1.6 to 1.7. And it can take your 35 millimeter lens and turn it into an 85 millimeter telephoto. And then there's also a compatibility list. Not every single Canon EF lens works with the aperture control or works perfectly with it. So you still might want to take a look at that list before assuming it's going to work with your lenses.
Yeah. We should also mention that this camera comes in a Micro Four Thirds.
Yeah, so there's a Micro Four Thirds.
Which is closer to the
the Micro Four Thirds is a lot closer to the actual native sensor size.
One of the big features this camera touts is 13 stops of dynamic range.
Having 13 stops of dynamic range, what that means in practice is that you can shoot a scene that has a lot of contrast, like from dark to bright, but what you get back out of that file is sort of more like a raw image. It's a lot like what you'd get out of a DSLR without processing the image at all. So it's sort of like, you haven't applied contrast and saturation, sort of like color grading. So what you see in the film profile when you get it back is a very flat and neutral image. And at first you're wondering like, why is this, image look like this?
Yeah.
This camera is supposed to be amazing. And then as you take the image in and process it, you realize that you can bring whatever character you want out of that image. You can, make it poppy and vivid and sharp.
Yeah.
You can make it muted and look a lot like natural film. And you have all the latitude of actually working with the video once you get it back to make creative decisions, in your timeline, where I had this 38 minutes of video and now I could go in and take each individual section and decide how I wanted to process that section and how I wanted it to look and what color profile I wanted it to have. To get the most dynamic range and to get the most quality out of the camera, you have to shoot it in the 2.5K RAW mode.
Correct.
And when you do that, how much can I fit on a 256 gig SSD? Because RAW is relatively large.
No, it's about 5 megabits per frame. So on a 256 at 24 frames, you'd run out in 30 minutes.
Okay,
and
so for every 30 minutes, you're going to have about 250 gigabytes
correct.
of video.
And then not only that, you're going to have to ingest it using Blackmagic's DaVinci Resolve, which you actually include with this, which is a pretty good deal considering that's $1,000.
Yeah, so that's Blackmagic's kind of color grading and processing software. For pros and cons, we both basically did them separately, and then looked at our notes and realized that we both have the same pro and cons.
One is for a little under $2,000. Like there's no other
the
way
pro
you
is
could get
that
this quality.
This is $2,000, and this is fantastic quality video. It's sort of like the difference between shooting JPEG and RAW on a DSLR.
Which comes to our next pro is picture quality, which is just amazing.
I've shot stuff with a lot of different SLRs and mirrorless cameras and things like that, and I've not seen video quality like this. Back on my. You plug it back in, load the video up in Premiere or Final Cut, and you look at the video, and you're just like, "Wow, this is, there's a production quality. This is something that you could put out on a major network."
Which leads to my next pro, which is the reason why you can tweak that image is the recording formats, which on an SLR you'll have MPEG 4.
Yeah, an SLR already records to some sort of compressed,
or lossy,
AVC, kind of format where you get this kind of compressed look, and now you have to take that compressed stuff and edit it and compress it again.
What about your cons?
So the first major con that I noticed was the audio issue. You can't. The onboard mic is really terrible.
It's basically just so you have audio on your track so you could sync up your clean audio that you use on a recorder.
It's not
after
intended to be used as an actual audio track. And it picks up the fan noise. And even when you use the 1/4-inch jacks on the side, they are balanced. And so you can use an actual XLR microphone with them with the right cable. However, it won't provide phantom power. And the audio quality of it just didn't seem that great. So I would highly recommend using an external recorder and then just syncing the audio up.
Another con is there's no media management on the camera itself. You're going to have to pull the hard drive out.
Right. So you saw that we can label the clips.
Yeah, you could label the clips just fine and add tags. And you could play through them, but you can't. There's no way to delete it.
There's no way to delete the clip. And so if you accidentally were recording a bunch and you wanted to kill that clip, you have to dump it to a computer.
Yeah, and there's actually no way of seeing how much space is left on the hard drive either.
Right. And I think my final con, which you agree with as well, is just the battery life.
Oh yeah.
The built-in battery, it's nice that it has it as opposed to not having a built-in battery.
Right.
But it really just doesn't last long enough to use in the field. So you're going to have to be carrying around battery packs, which are a little clunky, and then you got a cable to attach.
Yeah. I mean, it would have been nice if it had an interchangeable battery.
That's the big problem, is not being able to swap the battery for another battery means that you have to have a battery pack with the DC adapter.
Buy, try, don't buy.
Considering all of these, features with this camera and the kind of, it's got some cons, but I think the pros outweigh the cons, and I think it's a buy. It's something that you would have to consider. I sort of wanted to give it a try, but I think I have to give it a buy because if you're the person that's looking for this type of camera, there's nothing else in the price range that you can touch. So, it's definitely a buy, and you can use all the money you save to buy all of the other gear and the tripods and the cages and the audio recorders and the SSDs and the lenses,
shoulder mount and everything.
Shoulder mount.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I too think it's a buy. If you're that up and coming indie filmmaker, this is the thing that you're looking for.